Hello, everyone. This is Treasure Corals and Frag Garage finally in the house.
Yeah, it's finally happening for real.
It is finally
The
happening.
tech side sorted. I don't see anything on the stream yet, but it is.
I think there's a 30-second delay. So
Okay,
let's
yeah,
see.
yeah,
Because it says we're live. Oh, yeah.
yeah. It's
No,
probably just a delay.
it,
Nice.
it just kicked in. So
Yeah, sweet. Okay, so yeah, here we go.
perfect. So hi, everyone. We finally made it happen. I apologize profusely for the disconnect from last time. We ran into some serious technical troubles, but this time around, we come to you with a very low tech. I think we're both on the iPhones. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, but what we will do is we're going to be a little bit more mobile. Maybe even ask Adam to show us a couple of things. He's got
That's
a much
true,
better background than I do, but that's why we have him here.
Yeah.
Wow. This is
good thing I cleaned
great.
the glass. If I'm going to show you anything, it's glass was not so clean last week. So I also feel more prepared this week. So this should be a good chat. Sure.
Excellent. Plus, we actually have a little bit of notes, so it might be a little bit more structured than some people may expect.
Yes.
And we are 20 people are watching us right now, so I just want to ask everyone to maybe share the stream with your social circles, because the more people join, the more fun we're gonna have. All right.
And hit that like button.
Well, sounds like a pro. Adam, you do have a YouTube channel, is that correct?
Yeah, I do, and I intend to create more content. It's right now I'm not really going after having a big massive YouTube thing. If it organically just kind of starts to happen, then I would be happy with that. But I could use a little advice on getting that going, I suppose. But I'm trying to do more video content. I think people seem to have reacted well to the videos that I've done so far. So probably do some more soon. Sure.
On the thumbnail for this stream, this is a photo that you've taken. So maybe how long did it take you to take it? It was almost like a snapshot. Is that the case?
Yeah. So I use an Olympus TG6 for most of my photography. And do you have an experience with one?
No, it's the one that you can put it down into the water, right?
Yeah. So I kind of think that obviously it wasn't made for reef aquarium photography, but somebody years ago with one of the older models just figured out that they work great in our tanks, and it's got all kinds of different macro modes and once you kind of figure out the white balance, it's a pretty awesome tool because you know how hard it is sometimes shooting through a viewing panel from above or trying to get the water still or the reflections off the surface. If you can just stick the camera in the water, it's so much better. So I'm a big fan of that camera.
And are you using a shooting RAW or JPEG?
I usually just shoot JPEG because most of my photos are just going to be for website use and sort of lower res. But if I'm actually going after a little bit more artistic photography, I'll put it into RAW because why not, right?
Right. So I do a little bit of photography, and my understanding is that one of the points of using RAW is you don't need to worry too much about the white balance when you're shooting.
Yeah. All the information's there. Yeah, the thing is I'm kind of looking for speed most of the time when it comes to posting stuff to the site. So if I can get the white balance pretty close, when I take the photo and I just make a little small adjustment, then I don't have to go too crazy with it. But I do use Photoshop too. But yeah, most of my photo editing is just actually in the preview app on my MacBook, and it's just really, really quick to just give everything a quick little balance. So
and mostly on your website, you've got Wizzy weeks or colonies to cut.
So my website has usually I try to update the WYSIWYG section pretty regularly, and I have pretty much all the colonies and types of coral that I have in my collection on there, whether they're in stock or not, because yeah, sometimes there's something that is in grow out mode for 6 months, but I'm not going to take it off the website. I want people to know that it will eventually become available again. So, yeah, basically the collection I've had over the past about 10 years is on my website. So, yeah.
And then, what's your process for Wizzy Week? Like, is it really cumbersome? Like, it's a lot of work to get it.
When I get a bunch of frags ready to be photographed, I just kind of go on a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a mission to like just photograph all of them. Sometimes I'll do them under white, like the daytime spectrum. Sometimes I'll do them under blue, and sometimes I'll post both photos on the site, which is a little extra work, but I think it kind of shows, a little more fairness for some pieces. But most of the photos are just under my daylight spectrum, which has a lot of blue in it, anyways. Yeah, no, it's not too much work. It's just, like it's obviously more than if somebody just puts in an order, and I make the frags, I cut the frags then and there. But it's really nice if I have everything on hand. So I really try to have, between 2 and 3 of everything that I have in my collection fragged at any given time. That's kind of my goal. It's hard to keep up though.
Yes, and I'm just starting with the treasure corals, and I've got only the colonies that I would cut first, but now I'm transitioning into Wizzy Week, and
Yeah.
I just don't know how you do it with keeping track of where every one of those frags is. I always forget.
Yeah, well, my racks that I have are actually they're gridded with numbers and letters, so I can potentially organize based on that, which kind of helps. But I don't know. I'm probably just because I'm so obsessed. I just kind of usually know where everything is and what everything is, so I can keep track of it.
Well, the nice thing is then you have SKU, and the SKU will have that number in there
Yeah,
and whatnot. So that makes it very much organized.
yeah, totally.
So I think, well, we are close to 40 people watching, so this is
Oh, that's
great.
pretty
Thank
good.
you
Nice.
for spending your Sunday. I'm sure a lot of people will have a little beverage or two. I
Yeah,
think
yeah, I might
Adam
be having a beverage. Yeah.
is enjoying his as well. And just, I'm sure a lot of people know who Adam is, and I've seen you on many other podcasts or video casts, and basically Frag Garage is the name in itself. But Adam, maybe you can give a quick one, just who you are and what you do, and
Yeah.
why we should listen to you. So.
I mean, I'm about a 22-year in hobbyist. Most of my career I've produced music and been a music producer and a musician, and this was my hobby. And somewhere along the way, it sort of became about 50-50 for me, doing choral, selling frags, and still running a recording studio and producing bands. And then I had to move out of my studio space about 3 years ago, and just kind of coincidentally, this started really picking up for me. And then COVID happened, and it was a perfect kind of opportunity to get into like a niche kind of hobby, home base kind of thing. So yeah, just since I've been full time, I've expanded and added more systems. Moved into a bigger place, moved into a bigger garage. I was in a small garage before. Now it's the large Frag Garage. And yeah, I just ship coral across Canada on a regular basis, and it's not a bad life. It's actually really nice being home based too, because like I can, constantly just come and make like a little adjustment here or there, check on something. I feel like having a shop is probably nice for getting things out of your head a little bit. Like your work and your home aren't so integrated, but I would hate to like say have a 20-minute or a half hour or 45-minute drive to work and then realize that I forgot to turn a switch off or turn a pump back on when I left, because like, it happens all the freaking time, right? So I'm just constantly coming in at night and doing some little dose or checking something, and it's probably served me well as far as having any kinds of incidences thus far. So yeah.
And when you come at night, like, do you see anything different than what you would see during the day that would surprise you in terms of the coral or whatnot?
I mean, anybody that's looked at their tank at night with a flashlight will see that a polyp extension of SPS is pretty cool to see. Yeah, and I have witnessed a spawning event, which actually one of the videos on my channel has my Aropora spawning.
Yes.
and I don't know if I pissed them off in the fact that I turned the lights on, but I mean, I had to get some video of it, so I got some pretty good video that's on the site. So, and it made me think too. It's just like that just happened to be a night that I noticed it, but it probably has happened quite a few times in the past, and I just haven't been there for it. So, but both times it happened, it was around maybe 2 or 3 hours after the light was out. So probably, yeah, somewhere in that range. So not like deep into the middle of the night, but more just like 2 or 3 hours after your last light dims out completely. So yeah, I think it's something people should check, especially if they have a healthy system with a lot of fast growing Acropora. Like there's always going to be a chance that they've got that extra energy to produce the ingredients to make new corals, so
Yep.
yeah.
And I think you have 3 systems. Roughly, what are their total sizes?
Yeah, so the system here is 2 6x3 by 14 tall tables, and actually I don't know if you can see, but the overflows kind of crisscross into each other, so they're offset,
Yep.
and then they obviously share a sump. All my equipment is down under this side, the sump's under this side. And then the other system back there is 9 by 4 by 16 tall. And that's kind of my LPS and softy. And then in the back corner, there's a kind of like I call it more my kitchen sink tank at this point. Like I kind of use it for quarantine sometimes. Sometimes it's just get a backup of certain things in it. It just depends on what I'm doing. If I'm doing more importing, I do like to have a separate system to, say, park the Acropora in for a month or so, so I can really kind of see if anything pops up. So, yeah, those are kind of my main systems. I also have a couple systems in a local fish store, so I kind of have a bit of a extension of my business that is able to be available publicly through the store Blue World Aquariums. So I've got a frag tank there, and I've got a big display there as well, where I keep a lot of backups. So,
and
yeah.
Across all of those systems, do you try to standardize on parameters and the husbandry, or you make exceptions to that?
Yeah, like you mean how do the systems run a little bit differently parameter wise?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I would say that over time, there's maybe slightly different methods going on, but I have kind of found over time that most corals like very similar water. I think that's a little bit of a misconception that LPS need way dirtier water than SPS. Like I think I would say the nutrients between the SPS system and the LPS system are very similar and have been for quite a while. And everything is healthy and expanding and growing well. But yeah, what was I saying?
Sorry, what are they? Yeah.
So lately, I've been actually paying a little less attention to my nutrient levels. I feel like I was a little bit too clinical about it for a while and too obsessed with, getting close to certain numbers. Now I'm at a point where I'm almost like happy to just use the salifert nitrate and salifert phosphate, because all I want to see is some color. Like I used to be like, okay, I'm going to try to get, a specific number for nitrate, a specific number for phosphate. I'm kind of more going back into the mode of just being like, well, as long as I have some and not none, then I think things pretty much are always going to be fine. And I just know from looking at my corals, like I can tell you that like Acropora millipora is probably one of the first corals to start to lighten up if your nitrates and phosphates are low. Because I think probably because millipora is such a hungry acro, like it's got so much polyp per square inch or whatever, like it's just absolutely covered in big fuzzy polyps, so it's a hungrier coral, so it kind of makes sense that it would require more food.
And is it the same with darkening? Like when things darken, that maybe there's just too much nutrient, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I mean, I don't tend to have a problem with things getting too dark, because for whatever reason, just I don't know if it's just the volume of coral that's in these systems. They just don't, like, the nutrients get used very easily, very quickly. Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously different if you have like a big system that has a bunch of small frags in it. Like those corals aren't going to be using nutrients up as fast. So how you treat that system is going to be totally different. So I also don't really heavily overstock for fish. I would say all of my tanks have, like, these tanks have 3 to 4 like tangs in each. The back one has, well, rabbitfish tang, those larger grazing type fish. I'd say there's 6 in that back tank. And then just probably, I don't know, like a dozen or more smaller fish per tank kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I've never been a super heavy feeder. And I'll definitely feed more if I notice things are lightening up or nutrients are testing at 0, which, I mean, I guess I'll be clear. I never want them to test 0. Like if something tests 0, that's not good. But I guess, yeah, I'm trying to just like relax on that a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think that naturally our tanks kind of want to find a balance, like in their own way. And if your nutrient ratio is way off, I mean, there's ways to start to fix it, but I don't know. Nature wants to find a balance. I've always found that. I think it's kind of like that with certain kinds of algae and stuff. Like I've found things like cyano. A lot of the time, if I just siphon some of it out, but don't do anything too critical with it, like it will eventually just work its way out of the system.
That's neat. So I'm mentally, I have like a list of follow-up questions that we're going to get to in a second. I just want to welcome everybody. We're at 50 now. Guys and gals, please like the channel, as it helps, and as well as you are tuning in right now, and we're talking about coral coloration and polyp extension. We're going to get to both, and we're going to go deep. Please share this channel right now amongst your social circles. With that said, there is quite a few people kind of writing in: Rogue Aquariums, Hurricane Aquatics, Lee's Reef. So, hey everyone, hello from Saskatchewan, Island Reef, and Tom. So, Canadian Reef Master is actually mentioning your culture coral from Blue World selection, which is starting to color up well. So I guess
nice.
that's no surprise. And we had our first question. So feel free to throw your questions in there to make sure that as we meander, we touch upon it. But what's the ratio of aquacultured versus, I guess, cultured or wild colonies in your system?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm trying to be as aquacultured as possible, but that also poses the question of like, at what point is something aquacultured? I think it's like once you've fragged something and grown it from, say you get a mariculture colony and you've fragged something and then you've regrown it from that, it's kind of a second generation. Then that would be aquacultured. I would say that probably 75 to 80% of my corals are aquacultured, like grown here. And actually, something I've been meaning to put on the website is a little watermark for every coral that I can certify I have grown totally from my own broodstock, because I think that's something that should have value to customers.
Yes. And at what point do you feel, after having a coral, that this coral is now ready for an aquarium? My limited understanding is that a lot of times there is a difference between a wild colony that, let's say, just gets imported, or even aquacultured ones, where sometimes they hold the color, or sometimes you know that there's going to be a huge dip in color. So people go to a local store and they get this beautiful mariculture or whatever colony, but there's no chance that it's going to maintain that color.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, aquaculture, when you're talking about SPS or Aropora specifically, I would not sell anything that I haven't had for at least 3 months, but generally my rule would be more like 6 months. I think when it comes to LPS and softies, you could sell something right away. However, I think to be fair, it should be in a system for at least a month before it's sold, probably for the purpose of essentially quarantining and just making sure that whatever shipping stress and adaptation to aquarium water chemistry is, that it's settled in and it's healthy and good to go. I don't think it's good practice for a business to say bring in a whole bunch of torches and just cut them up the next day and sell them the next day. I think they should be settled for a little bit of time. But that's just me. Like everything that I sell when it comes to euphilia has been in my system for usually a couple months before I post it on the site. So yeah,
sounds very fair.
Yeah.
And there's a question. So Lee's Reef is asking, what is your thoughts on Goniopora and how to keep them healthy? So maybe we'll just answer that.
I have really found that Goniopora have been sort of easier to keep in the last few years, and a lot of people have been asking that question, why? I mean, I think certain trace elements seem to affect them more than other LPS. I do dose on the LPS system the what is it? The let me grab the bottle. Yeah, it's the multi-elements A and B, but I run a calcium reactor on that system. Mm-hmm. So this basically is the trace. This is the trace that you're not getting from your calcium reactor. It's the extra elements that basically don't come out of your reactor media. Okay. So I use that, and my Gonies in that system look awesome. So I think success with Goniopora is a little bit more hinging on trace elements than maybe some corals. And also, I think it's really easy to give them too much light. And you have to be careful, because if you are putting them in low light, they still need decent flow too. So it's finding that combination of low light, low to moderate flow, but not no flow. And another thing I would say too is aquaculture Goniopora are definitely always going to be hardier. There are some problems with imported Gonies. Sometimes there's die-off in the skeleton of some of the little microorganisms and little things that live in there. So something I'll do sometimes if I get a Gonie that's like a wild, like more like a tennis ball size or golf ball size, is I'll frag it up right away. After it's settled for a few days, and that kind of gets some of that other porous tissue out. I know that actually Goniopora skeletons is what they were experimenting with for bone grafting, because it's such a porous material for, I guess, for tissue to hold on to or whatever. I don't know the scientific side of it, but there's some medical potential in there, which is kind of cool. So, yeah.
Well, hopefully that answers the question. And if there's any people that know things about bone grafting, let us know. Hello, everybody in UK. So appreciate you staying up a little bit later. And look at this. So why don't we define par? First of all, do you have a par meter?
No, I don't really like par meters.
So how do you know whether it's medium, low, or high light?
I'm just kind of joking around. I have a friend that has a par meter, and I feel like if I owned one, I would be way too obsessed with checking everything all the time. Yes. So I kind of think it's actually nice to just sort of check every so often, because like I'm never changing anything that dramatically. And once you have had some experience with the par meter, you kind of start to just know. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like rocket science. Like if I've tested my tank, like at the surface around here is around 500, and I've tested it on the sides, like I just kind of have a bit of a feel for it, unless I make some major change. But I guess I could give you the range of what I run things in, because people are probably curious. So the SPS system is anywhere from about 150 to 500. I haven't really found much higher than that to be beneficial. There are some pieces that I think could probably take more light, and it might pull more color out of them. But as it is right now, it seems to be a pretty happy balance for everything. Because the way this system is I can just place things further to the side or closer to the middle, depending on how much light I want to penetrate. But yeah, so it's kind of like around the sides here, like on the racks are probably about, I don't know if you can see in the shot, but about 250 And then it's kind of like 300, 350, 400, 450, 500 kind of around the total center top area. So the LPS system, I would say the lowest corners are probably about 50 par. And that's, I will keep chalices down there. Some really low light chalices, like the Raja Rampage is one that, like, I've even found that chalice you can grow it underneath egg crate rack and it's totally happy. Like, it doesn't even need direct light pretty much. So around the 50 par to 100 par for chalices. Ghanies are probably getting, between 75 and 150, depending on the morph. But I find most Ghanies are pretty happy around 100, from what I've guesstimated based on previous testing. Euphelia, I would say, especially torches, there's a misconception. They definitely can handle a lot of light, and I did find that when I ran them under higher par, my torches grew faster. But they seem to do really well under lower par too. So I think my Euphelia probably at the peak highest point probably hit 150 to 200
And
par.
when you say Euphelia, do you discriminate between the, let's say, prog spawns and haberns versus
I would
torches?
Torches I would say can take more light than hammers and frog spawns, octospawns, the other Euphelia variants. But yeah, definitely torches seem to like more. But also there's different species of torches. I think the stubbier tentacle types seem to like a little less light. And the more like long polyp Indo types seem to be happy with a little bit more. But I don't know. I stopped obsessing with the numbers a little bit more. And if you look at my systems, like nothing is on too different of a level. Like I have corals that, like, because people ask me all the time when they order, they're like, "What's the best placement for this?" And I'm just like, whatever it adapts to is the best placement for it. Like, it's not like, like I have corals that I consider deep water that do fine under low par, but some of them just, there's a few frags sitting under 400 and they look great, So, but I probably didn't stick them there on day one. Like, I probably gradually moved them there. I don't remember. Sometimes I just move something and get it out of the way, and it's like, oh, hey, it's happy there. But I don't know. My tanks are, the par distribution is quite even throughout. So as far as like, I think compared to an aquarium, because my systems are frag systems and they're fairly shallow, an aquarium is going to have a little bit more depth and a bit more variability than what I have. So it makes sense. It's still good to ask the questions for sure. And I do have a little light chart on my website for every coral. So if you want to see kind of a rough estimate of my suggestion for placement, I've got that information on there.
So everybody check out fraggarage.ca, and there's tons of information. As you have mentioned, there's a chart.
Yes.
It actually makes a lot of sense to me, because if you think about like moving a coral around even an aquarium, especially before, maybe now things are a little bit more level, but you would still have hot spots, and you'll have a big difference between just moving things even 1 foot. There may be 150 par to 350 par, and usually corals are able to take it almost always, unless this is like a chalice or something. So that just makes sense.
Yeah, and I think as the lights have gotten better, the diffusion of the light is better too. Like the newer generations of radions, the 5s and 6s, like the diffusion is very good. Like, you don't need to use diffusers on them because there's no crazy hotspots. That being said, I actually do use diffusers on these because I was finding that I was getting a lot of eye fatigue from the reflection of the radions on the Euro brace. And I was wondering how that was affecting my eyesight, because blue LED light is probably one of the worst things for our eyes to view it directly. So putting the diffusers on actually kind of took some of the glare out. So, which, technically I sacrifice about 10 or 15% of the par of the fixture, but then I just turn them up. It's fine.
And so what lights are you running? Is this G5s radiance?
So there's this side, I tried the G6s, and then I've got, actually this is a replacement Orfec right now. This should be a 5-footer. And I've got, this is a aquatic life hybrid. So there's T5s here as well.
Yep.
So I'm running Orpec bars, T5s. This side has 5 G6 Radeon blues, and the other side is similar, but it's G4s or G5s. This is G6. This is G5 on that side.
And then supplemented with the some T5, correct?
Yeah, actually, this side has some Reef Brights and Orpec and T5. So there's a little bit more on that side.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. But yeah, we were talking about this actually, how it seems like a lot more lighting is kind of getting into more bars and more strip style lighting, like the blades. Yeah.
You can see this. The tank is lit, but the radians are not running. Everything is lit by blades, and somebody in the channel already said that they burned their coral with blades because it's super powerful.
Yeah, I know. I'd love to try them for sure. Yeah, I've heard all good things. So yeah, we'll definitely. I'll have to check them out in person at some point and go from there.
And when for par, when your friend comes over, what par meter does he or she have?
She has Apogee. Is
but
it
like
Apogee?
Older or newer generation?
It's pretty new. It's a couple of years old.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and as far as I know, that's kind of the one to get. I don't know if I've heard the best thing about some of the other. I won't name any of the other brands, but I've heard they're not, as professional grade. So, I feel pretty confident that the reading we got is it kind of makes sense to my eyes.
Because my concern has always been there's been shift to go even lower nanometers. So G6s, for example, got that UV channel, and a lot of it, especially older par meters, just cannot pick up. So you might be burning your coral without even knowing.
Yeah. And that's another reason to just go on like use your eyes to gauge what the corals are responding to. It's like a number is just a number at the end of the day. I mean, I also think that distribution of light is sometimes more important than par because like we were talking about with hotspots or shadowing is another thing. I mean, if you have one of the reasons I like Radeons. I think they're great on their own, and especially if you're using XR30s because there's a lot of light kind of compacted in an area. But Radeon XR15s on their own, I really feel like you need to throw some bars in there as well, some Reef Brights or Orphex or blades. I find them to still be kind of shadowy, even regardless of the better diffusion. And shadowing leads to sometimes STN or just general like not as good health of a coral. So I'd say less important on LPS because LPS are kind of move and wave around, but it's for corals like Aropora that are static. You don't want shadowing. That's why T5s were such an effective light, is because they're so heavily diffused and they fill in all those little spaces. So I think that's a big thing for coral health for sure.
Well, same for blades. Like when I put that on, the tank just like, there's so much shadowing. Even with 4 radians, there was a little bit of that happening.
Yeah. Are the blades like LED clusters, or how do they?
They kind of are, but you don't even see that because it's a strip, and then I think it's blocks about 6 inches, and each one has a certain number of LEDs spread out, and then there's another one and the other one. So that's how they basically sell it. So that's why they can scale from 2 feet to all the way to 6 feet.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Well, hey, if anybody from Max Specs wants me to try them out, I'm happy to give it a go.
Aqua Illumination.
Oh, it's an Aqua Illumination? Yes. Okay, I thought it was Max Spec. Yeah.
Well,
okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know if you know, but I'm sure a lot of viewers know. I'm the signature series on Aqua Illumination. So if you actually go Mobius and go lighting, I think I'm the second or third person with a template. And I've been running them for a while, so I'll talk to them maybe even next week. So I'll pass that along, Adam. And maybe they'll even share this video. So speaking of sharing, we're at 65 people. Please,
thanks. That's pretty good.
Share. Let's get to 100. I'm feeling bullish over here. So snake eyes. Yeah. So saying hi, par meter, what lights are running? So we've answered that question. Sergey, hello, привет. So Hurricane Aquatic says, I have Apogee 510, which is the latest, and ITC Parwise, which have been released last month. I've done extensive testing, and the Apogee reads 100 par higher than Parwise. So, but probably still, it's a great light.
Yeah.
So that's great. And my corals, yeah, so perfect. So we've covered that, but what about spectrum? So, we talked about par, but what do you feel like? The blue, indigo, royal blue, white, do you mix? Do you find that one is safer than the other? What's your...
I've been curious about the hyperviolet and ultraviolet spectrums of whether, I should limit the exposure to them or not. But generally, I've kept those around 80-90% most of the day, and I haven't, noticed anything bleach or respond negatively. I would say as my lights are ramping up, I kind of start with the UV and the royal blue, and then I start introducing more of the blue, and then at that kind of afternoon point, the T5s will come on, and I only run the T5s for 4 to 5 hours. So they're more of just a midday peak. And then my whites actually will go up to 60 or 70%. And actually I run them at 100% on the G6 blues because they're actually pretty wimpy on the, honestly, if I did it again, I would have gotten pros for the G6s. I don't care for the blues for this system that much. It's just a little bit too wimpy in the white department. That being said, I mean, for an LPS system where you really want to just pop blues, it's probably great for certain tanks. So it's just not as great for this system overall. But yeah, so my photo period's about 11 hours, and it's just a slow ramp up of various things coming on. I think the bars come on for about 10 hours. Like I said, T5s for 4 to 5, and I mean, one thing I've been trying to do is kind of get away with shorter lighting periods and generate, pulling less electricity. Anything I can do to reduce heat, to reduce power consumption. And I think it's been working well. So I've actually gotten my power bill down over the last years. So just from making some little adjustments. For example, I actually run I heat the room at night with my mini split air conditioner heat pump. So I heat the room to 75 degrees, and my heaters don't come on anymore. And I noticed that my electrical bill was down about every 2 months. My bill comes in, it was down about $150, just from the heaters not coming on, because there's probably 1,000 watts worth of heaters in this room or more. So if those are all running for 8 to 10 hours at night during the winter, that's a lot of power, right? So, and I think probably some of the European reefers would really be trying to be efficient with their power use too, right? It's electricity is a lot cheaper in Canada than it is in a lot of parts of Europe. So
that's the case. And have you considered heating up the whole area instead of using the heaters per se, or
well, that's kind of what I do. Yeah, I mean, I just heat the whole room at night. I feel like 75. If the room's 75, the tanks, just from the pumps running and the UV and things like that, they heat the water anyways. Pumps do heat your tank a little bit. I mean, DC not as much as AC, but so you're going to have a bit of a base level of heat anyways. So 75 seems to just keep everything. It seems like the tanks stay around 70. I run the LPS system a little cooler, so it runs 76 to 77, and the SPS system is more like 77 to 78.
Really? What's the rationale for
that? Just from what I understand, because LPS corals tend to be found a little deeper, it's just a little colder, a little deeper, and the regions that they're collected tend to be a little bit cooler. So it makes sense for them to be kept in a little bit cooler water. Yeah, just based on where they come from, it seems to make sense. I mean, all we're trying to do is emulate nature, anyways, right?
So 76 to 77 for LPS and 77 to 78 is roughly SPS.
Yeah.
That's neat. And so we've covered or talked about the lighting and the par. What about the flow? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, so if we're talking SPS,
Mhm.
I use a lot of gyres. I think they're probably the best way to move water across like a long flat area.
Yes.
Um, I do really like MP40s and the MP pumps from Ecotech.
Yep.
So I use some of those as well. Uh, but mostly max spec Gyre 250s. I actually found the Gyre 250s to be a bit more of a reliable model than the 350. The 350, I seem to have to tech those more, even though they're easy to take apart and clean.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I have a couple of the Red Sea Wave 45s, and I find them a little wimpier than the Gyre 250s and 350s. I don't really like them as much, and I don't like the controller. So personally, I would recommend people just to use gyres over them. But whatever you like, really. Yeah.
And what mode do you usually put those on?
So I'm trying to remember. I guess it's like an alternating mode. I just kind of try to randomize things as much as possible.
Mm.
But I also like the LPS system. I actually have programmed. I wish you could turn MP40s. You can't program them to go to 0%. You can only program them to 1%, and
Yes.
1% is actually still kind of strong. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like it's relative 1%.
Do you
So
know
I actually,
why? Do you know
well, I
why?
think I think you don't want them to shut off completely, because then when they turn on, there could be a snail or a wrasse or
Yeah,
something in it.
that's
Yeah.
correct.
However, I just decided to just risk it, and I have my LPS system. I programmed some of my MP40s to turn off for a half an hour at a time during certain parts of the day, because we were going to talk about polyp extension a little bit,
Yes.
but one thing, just to kind of jump into that for a second, with LPS is I really think they need a rest sometimes, and if you really want them to expand and kind of like, I don't know, like it seems like just there's more variability at deeper depths too. So I'll turn some of my pumps off for a half hour on, half hour off throughout the day, and that
Mhm.
seems to get things to expand more. And I think, yeah, I think it does. They do enjoy a little bit of a break from the constant, back and forth.
That's the LPS,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah,
so
yeah,
probably
yeah.
softies as well.
Yeah, yeah, softies as well. I think it doesn't hurt to have a bit of a break.
Yep.
SPS, like, I mean, I'm pretty constant with everything. It's running pretty intense almost all the time. I don't really believe in like turning your flow down at night for SPS. Like my experience, like diving and swimming in the ocean, is that it's not necessarily gentler at night.
Hmm.
Like, it seems like storms and all the rough stuff happens at night. But yeah, I could be wrong on that. Um, at the depths of a reef, it could be different, but generally, just keep the flow the same.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
it's kind of more random. Have you tried things like more gyre or wave or one of those things? Have you experimented with that?
Uh, yeah, I have a little bit. Like I've set, like, so some of my gyres that are in pairs, I'll set them to alternate,
Hmm.
which I think is good. I honestly think at the end of the day, just like as much randomization as you can create,
Yeah.
and you don't want pumps that are working against each other.
Yep.
However, if they do occasionally work against each other, then you get these offset weird kind of patterns that happen. So I don't know. I mean, I don't have a lot of interest in spending a bunch of time experimenting with different wave patterns and analyzing, like, does it help this? Does it help that? Like, it's like, if the water's random, the corals are probably going to be happy. So uh, just make sure. I mean, I think the thing to think about, especially with SPS and most corals in general, is that water should be constantly flowing through every part of that coral. Like it should be, like, Acropora should never have detritus, especially once a colony starts to get big. It shouldn't have detritus or anything captured in the middle of it. It should always be flushed out.
Wow.
Like every part of the coral should have flow going underneath it, above it, through its branches, and then you'll have a healthy colony. And that's why sometimes if you move a large colony, it might RTN or start to have an issue because it'll be so set into a flow pattern that where it was happy, and that's the reason it grew into a big colony in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's a good advice.
yeah.
I just had a thought that the difference between a cook and a baker. The whole thing where a baker is a recipe and it's very regimented
Yeah.
and very hard, and the cooks are usually, and people that fall into one of those categories, and the cooks are
Yeah.
usually give me the basics and I'll add a little bit of salt or whatever to my
Yeah.
liking, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
clearly, a lot of reefers, including yourself, are more in that category.
Yeah, I mean, I guess baker is more kind of has chemistry at play, whereas a
Yes,
cooker is
yes.
just putting components together. So, yeah, that's a funny way to look at it for sure.
That's what I fight with all the time, because as a technologist, I'm a lot more in the baker category. So, like, to me, it's
Yeah.
like, give me a number. It got to be 225 par,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not 220.
Well, and I would say that I'm a baker when it comes to some things, and then
Yeah.
I'd say I'm a cook when it comes to other things. Like I kind of think that being too obsessed with par numbers is kind of a waste of time, and I think being too obsessed with flow patterns is kind of a waste of time. I think it's a little bit just
Yeah.
kind of being a bit nerdy with your toys.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense to anyone. It's just like, like I don't know. At the end of the day, like, how do your corals look? Like, are the polyps moving? Are the colors good? Like, there's just, it's once you start to get an eye for what to look for, and
Yeah.
like, it just, like, this stuff is all just kind of, it's just fun. It's fun to mess around with it. But I just want water to be moving, and I want light to be hitting my corals. And yeah, if something starts to get too like, it looks shocked from the light, I'll move it down. I'll move it into a corner. It's all about that. Just, knowing what you're looking at. Learn to know what you're looking at.
That's a great advice. The observation, right?
Yeah.
Because, PNC Bio had mentioned that he's using, or she's using, 2-hour low flow during lights out will get you peppermint shrimp hunting aptasia, which makes sense, especially in the SPS system.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just bombarding. So there is benefit in that.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I see. Yeah. Go ahead.
Please.
Sorry. I see peppermints out at night just with my flow being the same. So, but I don't know what kind of flow would be like where a peppermint can't hold on. But maybe it's more that they're more encouraged to go scavenging versus a bit more of a turbulent environment.
Yes.
So I can understand that. Yeah.
So I'm gonna slowly segue to one of the main topics.
Yeah.
I have a Mountain Dew Acro, which is, it's a green, but it's got like nice polyps kind of coming out, and it's in my high energy, high flow system, where really I could see a little bit of polyps, but not much. When I was taking some photos, I moved it to kind of medium energy, medium flow, more LPS system that had the a different flow pattern with more breaks and whatnot. And I noticed that the polyps really came out on that one. So this segue is into polyp extension. What do you know about polyp extension? What can you tell us about that?
Well, it's interesting that so the same coral, when you moved it to another system, had more polyp extension just because the flow was less.
Or lighting was less at the time, or it was, I looked at it funny, or it was something else. That's the thing, right? It's anecdotal. So,
and was this like within a day or two of moving it to the other system?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because it's something I wanted to sort of mention about polyp extension is I think people are always talking about polyp extension, but I think polyp health is a very, very large part of it. Like, the term polyp health should actually be probably thrown around a little bit more, because I can kind of give you a little bit of a funny example, but
please.
Basically, like, if a cnidarian, like any type of coral, say an anemone, or a polyp of whatever hard coral, if it's undernourished, it shrinks. And people don't really think about that so much, but as an example, I have these little speckled rose anemones that reproduce like crazy in the LPS system. And sometimes I just throw them in this water change bin over there. It's like it's where so when I do water changes, I save my last water change in a barrel, and there's some live rock in there. So I'll just throw the anemones in there when they're kind of like getting into a place I don't want them. And because they're not getting light and they're not getting the nutrients and food that they need, they start to shrink.
Yes.
So I think something people need to understand, that when a coral doesn't have good polyp extension, it's not that the polyp isn't extending as much as it can. It's that the polyp may actually be undernourished and may have shrunken. So a really healthy coral is gonna expand more because it's a healthier animal in the first place. You kind of think of like I had this analogy if you think about like SPS corals are like a colony, or it's like an apartment building. So like the colony is the apartment building, and then the polyps are the residents, and then like LPS corals are like, let's call them townhouses because there's less polyps per thing. So it's, you got your townhouse, and then your non-colonial type corals like your Welsos, brains, Scolies, those are like single family home. So yeah, so I mean,
you heard it here, folks.
Yeah. I mean, it's a funny way to look at it, but it's like, if the residents are healthy, and if they're, then they're going to be more social, they're going to be out there, they're doing stuff, they're active. And if they're not healthy, they're going to be secluded and in their home, and they're not going to be coming out as much. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that a polyp might start to decline in health. I mean, we can look at a lot of those factors, but, I mean, one thing for sure to consider with SPS is parasites. And like Aropora bugs are extremely common. Like if you've traded corals with, 2 or 3 people, chances are you probably have, even if you've dipped, there's a good chance you're going to have Aropora bugs. Some of them aren't super invasive, and you're hardly noticeable, but you might just see a little bit less polyp extension.
Yes.
And I'm talking about little tiny copepods. So for the longest time, the red bugs were the ones that were quite prevalent in the hobby. And actually, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I haven't heard of anybody having red bugs for like forever. Like I don't know anybody that's had the red bugs that we had pretty prevalent in the hobby 10 plus years ago. And they were really easy to treat. They died from interceptor. Milbemycin, oxine would knock them out at a pretty low dose without them returning. But there's a couple other types. I think the gray bugs, the black bugs, same kind of copepod, but they seem a lot more resistant to the milbemycin. So hopefully something comes up. I think that the dip manufacturers need to stop saying that their dips are all effective against all types of parasites, because those bugs do not, even potassium chloride doesn't work on all those types of bugs, because they live in the coral's slime and on their tissue. So they don't just come off like a flatworm or like a larger crustacean. It's definitely like a little bit more of an advanced thing. That being said, I don't want to worry anybody, because it's like they don't seem to affect all Aropora, and they don't tend to kill things. It seems that you just don't get polyp extension, and colors can start to fade. Yeah, it's another thing back to what I said earlier, is just like get to know what you're looking at. Like you want to have a good eye for stuff. If you can't see something on it, get a friend with good eyes to go take a close look. The magnifier. Magnifier is a good way to do it.
Pretty handy. You can see things quite well.
Yeah, and I feel bad. I'm one of those guys that I go to people's houses and I'm like, oh, you got bugs on your acros. Sorry. I just, once you kind of know how to look for them, they're easy to spot. Yeah. So I'm kind of at a point now where I just have chosen that I'm going to do interceptor on my system twice a year, just as a maintenance thing. Hopefully I'm not breeding a super bug or something by creating some kind of resistance, but I just think it's probably good practice to make sure that everything's clean. The sad part of it is that you have to move your if you have acro crabs, you have to figure out what you want to do. Either you have to sacrifice them or move them to a pest-free colony. So
the shrimp, right? The peppermint shrimp as well. So
Yeah, I mean anything like that. Obviously, any shrimp, any crustaceans have to be moved. So yeah, so
Excellent.
that's it's a bit of work, but yeah, I mean, for a business like mine, you kind of need to make sure that these things are clean and taken care of. So yeah,
What about acroporating flatworms?
yeah. So acroporating flatworms. I mean, I don't find that acro worms tend to initially mess with polyp extension that much. It's more that you'll see a section where you'll see bite marks or something, and then it's time to start taking precautions against them.
Hmm.
I mean, it's so much easier to deal with something in a system where you can remove every coral like you can in mine, compared to like a display where everything is encrusted and growing on the rock, and you're not going to tear your rock structure apart.
Yes.
Because if those eggs are laid along the rock, like the only way to get at them is to completely remove them. In the past, when I had them, I had some success with super gluing over the egg masses, but there's always some chance there's some little corner or something where there were some eggs that you missed. So rebasing everything is really probably the best way to go.
But and even then, all it takes is like one tiny morsel, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
what about the Corallen Zucht? What is it? The flatworm.
Yeah, so flatworm stop, I
Excellent.
actually dose on my tanks as just it's one of the only things I dose as like
Mhm.
a extra product. And I can't tell you why. It just seems to make my acros healthier, and possibly it's a reason that I've been able to avoid some pests getting into the system. I don't know. I mean, I know for sure that it doesn't stop acro eating flatworms
Yeah.
proliferating in your system, but
Really?
it seems
So
to make them more resistant. So
I see.
I think it's the same with the Fonamarin flatworm X,
Yes.
AFWX. I think it's
Yep.
the same kind of thing where, they don't really say that it 100% eliminates them. It just makes the coral healthier and stronger and more resistant and less palatable. But I would say
And
flatworm stop, just for whatever reason, it just seems to do really good things for acros. So I dose it every day.
there was a question earlier about the tissue health, and
Yeah.
you mentioned polyp health, tissue health. So, can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it's kind of, we can get back to the apartment building analogy, because if
Yeah.
the polyps are the residents, then the apartment building, it also needs to be a healthy, nicely painted building.
Yep.
Uh, so, I mean, I think that, if the polyp is healthy, and if your nutrient levels are in a good range,
Hmm.
um, and if your light spectrum is relative to the nutrient level and what the coral needs, then you're going to have healthy tissue.
Yes.
Um, are there any tricks for getting tissue to be more healthy? I think it's just a general like health of the coral thing all
Hmm.
around. I mean, like, if like I said, if your polyps are big and expanding and healthy looking,
Hmm.
also look at your polyps, because some corals have more zooxanthellae on the actual polyp itself, and
Uh,
some
and it
corals, the
needs to.
zooxanthellae, yeah, some of them, the zooxanthellae is more within the tissue. So, um, yeah, and I've seen like the same coral in different tanks, like have differences too. I don't know if I would assume that it's beneficial for the coral to be pretty covered in it, but that's why you get into things where, like, if a coral is getting too dark, it's probably getting overpopulated by zooxanthellae, right? So, like,
Yes.
high phosphate, high nitrate, or an improper ratio, especially high phosphate relative to your nitrate, is going to overpopulate some of that. Because zooxanthellae are a plant, and they want to use nitrogen and phosphorus. They want to take it up. So
Yeah.
if they're taking it up, they're overpopulating. Your corals are going to get too dark, and that kind of essentially like starts to smother the coral.
And do you subscribe to the whole 1 to 100 ratio, phosphate nitrate?
Yeah, that's kind of what I've shot for. I mean, it's sort of, the thinking is based a little bit on the Redfield ratio principle, which is that most plants and most things in nature that perform photosynthesis seem to have a ratio of 16 to 1. nitrate to phosphate.
Yes.
And that seems to be like a balance that occurs in nature fairly regularly. Yeah, I have found that corals seem to be happy anywhere between 10 to 1 and 100 to 1. It seems to be, I used to say 100 to 1 is kind of what I shoot for, but I don't know if you follow, I can't remember if it was Dong Zhao that was talking about that. He's very knowledgeable, but he was saying he likes higher phosphates and he would run it more 10 to 1 would be more his ratio. So if your nitrate was 2, your phosphate would be 0.2, not 0.02, but 0.2.
I've recently added this feature to Aquatic Log where basically it will calculate the ratio for you and you'll it kind of thing. So I find it very handy.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Aquatic Log, sometimes it screams at me for my phosphates being too high. So you should you should maybe let it have a higher range for me.
Oh, you can override the range on another system as well. So basically you can have different tolerances depending on where you are.
Okay, nice. Okay, yeah. So you're not telling me how to run my shit. I understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. And also, NSB Reef says it makes coral slimy. So basically, that coral and Zucht flatworm.
Yeah, the flatworm stop. Yes. Yeah, we'll grab the bottle here. Yes, here we go. Okay. So yeah, no, it does. It does seem to help them produce more slime, and that seems to just be. I mean, I think if a coral is able to produce more slime as a reaction to something, that is an indication of its health because it's going to take resources to produce whatever proteins make that slime. So so I mean, I think at the end of the day, the flatworm stop is kind of just a source of food for the coral, and I don't know if they're like. I wish Coraline Zook, like, I think needs to be. They need to update their catalog and be a little bit more transparent with what is in their products because I don't know. I mean, it doesn't allow us to learn. That's the thing that bothers me about it is like I just want to learn why that makes my corals happier. Like you don't have to be all sneaky about it and like, you know, whatever wormwood extract, I don't know, rumors or what's in there. It's like, just tell us what's in there. Like, I don't know if you can get a patent on it. So sure, keep your business safe, but I just want to know what's in it. You know, but maybe it's just so simple and, you know, it's just kind of like
do this by
just, so then, you know, you would just copy it. Yeah, there's things like that. It's like the Polyp Lab primer is like basically just potassium chloride, right? So you know, and it's pretty expensive. So it's like, why wouldn't I buy what does a bag of this cost me? This is 5 pounds of potassium chloride. Was like $25 or something.
Where'd you get it? Where'd you get it?
I got it from Amazon, but I had to order it from Amazon.com.
Yeah, that's
so it costs like a little bit more to get it from the States, but not very much. I bought 2 bags for, I think it came to like $55 for 2 bags. So there you go, dipping forever, potassium chloride.
Yeah, I've run into this, and you mentioned there's a few other factors for polyp extension. Anything else that comes to mind when it comes to that?
Let's see. I have some notes, so I should actually check.
Become prepared, folks.
Yeah, like I talked about, I think flow variation is important, and I think that a break from flow can be beneficial too. Yeah, like polyp extension just seems to be so hand in hand with the health of the polyp that. Yeah, I wish that the discussion was more based on, like I said before, based on the polyp health. Yeah, I think I kind of pretty much covered it. It's you know, the only way to go deeper into it is just to start talking more about coral health. And feeding, obviously, too.
Just one question: are you running the recommended dose of KZ, like basically whatever they tell you?
Let me double check because it's been a while since I looked. 1 mil per. Yeah, it's about. I'm doing about the recommended dose, maybe slightly less.
I see. So that's okay. Answered. And so coral health. Then, what are your kind of go-to thoughts on that?
So I guess I would say that like feeding has been something that I have never put a lot of thought into. Like I do feed refroids, but I've started doing. So now I prepare my own food for my fish, and I blend up a bunch of seafood. I thaw out a pack of mysis. I add that. I add a little bit of amino. I add refroids, and I also blend up some nori in there too, and I add some Celcon as well. So I just make this like total slurry, and then I put them in ice cubes. So I make there's 14 cubes in a thing. So I make basically a month at a time. I make 2 sets. So and then I just thaw that out and feed it to all my systems. I don't turn off my pumps when I feed the SPS. It might help a little bit. I just don't really. I've tried really hard to see if Aropora polyps take in refroids, and I don't really think they do. I think it's more like you're getting the residual effect of that food. That food's feeding your microfauna, and it's like fueling different aspects of the system that turn into food for the coral. But yeah, I mean, corals are ingesting bacteria and all kinds of, there's other mechanisms at play that are bringing food. Obviously, there's zooxanthellae too. So yeah, sorry, the question, where were we getting from? What were we?
Well,
we
were talking about the coral health. And
yeah.
then you started talking about a little bit about the feeding, which, by the way, would make for a great video content if you want to post this on your YouTube channel, which you guys should subscribe to.
Yeah, that's true.
Those cubes would be quite fun. So, do you turn off your skimmer when you feed, or not really?
Technically, I do. So, something I've done to raise my nutrient levels and to give the corals a bit more of a chance of absorbing food that's in the water column. I have programmed my skimmer to turn. I mean, and this is my systems run. My systems are lower on the nutrient side. I don't struggle with having to lower them manually. So when my pH hits 8.5, which is around probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my skimmer turns off when it hits 8.5. So my skimmer is off until probably late at night, like 1 or 2 a.m. The skimmer comes back on. So there's about I don't know what that would be, 8 or 10 hour period where my skimmer is off on both of these systems. And that just gives a chance for the corals to absorb all of that stuff. So I feed during that window as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, and how do your pH go this high? Like,
so there's a combination of things. So I'm running, my dosing is a higher ratio of sodium carbonate to bicarbonate. So sodium carbonate buffers your pH, whereas sodium bicarbonate, I don't know if it drops it or is just fairly neutral around 8. But most like alkalinity supplements are a blend of bicarbonate and carbonate, and they're designed to be added to your tank so that you don't get a big pH spike. They're designed to basically be added to your tank. So like if you have just a little tank and you're just adding it manually once a day, you would add it all at once and then you wouldn't get this big spike. Whereas for me, I see it as an opportunity to raise my pH. So so I'm doing like it's 3/4 carbonate to 1/4 bicarbonate. I could go all. There is a system. One of my systems I run is all carbonate. I don't know for sure, but there's some articles that I've read that say that it should be a blend. It's just the way that some of those like biological processes need bicarbonate and carbonate. I mean, I'm just going on. I don't know, a bit of a guess, but yeah. So basically, I've made a more like pH saturated dosing solution, and then I also dose calcwacer at night. So and just I found that just the combination of things that I've done over time has elevated my pH to where my low is about 8.35, and then my high is about 8.65. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, my skimmer turns off when my pH hits 8.5, and that just kind of gives the tank a period of time where, because the pH is already, I actually want to have less of a like peak. Like I I wish that the pH variation was only 0.1 or 0.2, but it's about 0.3 right now. We'll get into this later, but there might be a correlation with pH swings that could be causing an RTN response in our corals. So, but this is something it's being worked on right now. So it's a discussion that'll happen at a later point. But
Matt Reef says sodium hydroxide as well. I guess we'll
So that would be another way to raise pH. I mean, I think the trick is to not get too much of a spike. So, another reason for me to have the skimmer turn off was to mellow out the spike a little bit too. Nice. And not to get too overly complicated, but I do run a calcium reactor on this tank as well. And the calcium reactor only runs during the day. Yeah. So it runs from 12 to 12 because it's going to lower the pH as well. I actually wish it would lower the pH more than it does, but
so you don't feel you want to push it to like 8.7, like the Chingham Reef or something?
Actually, some days I hit 8.7. Not to brag or anything.
Oh my God! Wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I haven't seen a huge difference in a 0.5 or 0.1 difference, but it definitely since I've been elevated, I've seen corals grow a lot faster. I think that's just like it's undeniable that corals grow faster at a higher pH. You can't argue with that.
And Johnny is asking you, how do you keep your alk consistent when using calc in combination with a calcium reactor? I guess just you're looking.
Yeah. Well, the thing that actually dials in my exact alkalinity is the fact that I dose 3-part as well. So so I'm dosing I think I dose like 600 mils of the alkalinity solution I make a day on this system.
You prepare it yourself, sorry, or are you using a brand of some sort?
I'm using Aquaforest in bulk. I buy their bulk. They have a commercial line, so I think I get like 25 kgs of calcium chloride, something like that. They come in big bags. So to me, that's been the most economical. Yeah. And then I do add the fauna trace. So the 1, 2, 3. So this is in my dosing. So just the amount I go through, like I used ESV like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was like, once things really started growing, it was just like what is this going to cost me, like $200 a month to dose the ESV I need? So so this is a good way to do it. Like Fauna Marine makes really good, they make really good, really clean, like good calcium carbonate. Like their products are good too, but I just need it to be cheaper. So that's why I'm using the bulk bags.
That's quite something. And then does it come, when you say carbonate and bicarbonate, like do they come with already pre-mixed, or you?
No, I think that what I get from Aquaforest is probably a mix. And then I don't know. Actually, I'm not entirely sure. I did email the company and I asked them if they could tell me what the mix was, and they didn't get back to me. So screw them. But I know some people that just buy baking soda and they bake it. So you bake off that extra carbonate molecule. You basically turn sodium bicarbonate into carbonate. So that's the way to do it. I mean, some people have really successful tanks just doing that. So technically I'm using soda ash that I get from another supplier. It's not the Aquaforest stuff.
And what about the Kalkwasser? What kind of reactor do you have for that?
So it's not a reactor. I just have these 18-gallon sealed jugs that are kind of for camping, but they're like a good quality BPA-free kind of style container. And I have them sealed up at the top because you want to keep the environment contained. And I just have a little cheap Coralia pump in each of them. And I do the Chris Meckley concentration. So it's like 6 grams per gallon. Yes. And 6 grams per gallon basically fully saturates. So you get almost no residual calc on the bottom of your reservoir, which is which is kind of cool because you're less likely to have some, like, I don't clean the tubs out very often. I just refill them. Because I look in the bottom and there's barely anything in there. It pretty much all gets put into the tank anyways. So
Nice. So
yeah.
sorry. So you throw it into how big are the containers? 18 gallon.
Yeah, actually, I guess we are kind of mobile here. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, look at that.
Yeah.
I love the
So
color. So
yeah,
let's
here's one here. So
okay.
yeah. So for people in Canada, you can get these at Canadian Tire, and they're
Mhm.
18-gallon ones, and I think they have like a 30-gallon one too, and they are pretty nice actually.
So how
Uh,
long is it gonna last you?
so I get about almost 2 weeks out of a full fill. So yeah, and there's a lot of controls going on to make that safe too. So like if my feed pump from my calc reservoir is only turns on. There's rules in my Apex, so it will only
Yes.
allow it to turn on if the pH goes below 8.4 or 8.45.
Hmm.
And then it is also only allowed to run between midnight and 12 p.m. So there's a period of time, and there's a safety rule. So if for some reason there was an overdose and the pH got too high, it wouldn't allow that pump to continue to dose.
Okay. Because
Yeah,
I use the Vast Marine one, the M2 S2 or whatever it's
it,
called, and
and that's a calc stir.
that's called Sir.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
adding a lot of like gallons. I'm adding like let's say 12 gallons per night,
Hmm.
and I don't find it. It probably adds a lot of it, but like I find this
Yeah.
solution is probably more efficient, right? I mean, the one that you have.
12 gallons per night? Are you
Yeah.
serious?
Sorry,
That's
12.
insane.
No, 12 liters. Sorry,
Okay.
that's a little bit
Yes.
better. Yes.
Yeah, it's funny because like I mean in Canada we're on the metric system
Yeah.
as is like Europe, but
12
like
liters.
there's
Three
certain things
gallons.
we just we like to say in gallons.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not too crazy. Um yeah, so these tubs are 18 gallons, so they're pretty large. I don't know what that
But
is in
but
liters,
I
but
think that what I'm adding is a lot less saturated than what you do, right?
yeah. No, I would say what you're adding is more saturated.
Oh,
Kelp
more.
stir, the idea is that you're making a more saturated slurry essentially.
Yeah.
And
Not
although
fast
the
enough.
most of the calc settles on the bottom, so you're more skimming the top off. But
Yeah.
yeah, like my style is just like it's constantly being stirred, so every bit of that calc is constantly like
That's interesting.
lifted into the water. And then dose it into the tank directly. So I don't know. I mean, it seems to be a really cheap and efficient way to buffer your pH and to add balanced calcium carbonate to your
Yes.
system.
Yes.
I mean, I think something if I ever set up like a little nano tank or something like that, that's totally what I would do. I just run calc at night, and and until the needs of the tank require more supplementation, like you could probably get away with it for a young tank for quite a while.
So I'm gonna go on a tangent here.
Yes,
Why?
tangent away.
Yeah. Why would you only do it at night? Like that doesn't has never made sense to me. So, and yet everybody's
Yeah,
doing.
I mean, there's a lot of streams and discussions about this to kind of delve into if anybody wants to look at,
Mhm.
Chris Meckley is a big
Yeah.
advocator of this dosing calc at night thing. I think, the theory is that like we've been chasing the wrong thing by chasing alkalinity as the thing we need to keep really stable, and that maybe it's more important to keep pH more stable. So, you're going to naturally see a rise in pH during the day
Hmm.
because of light, and then your corals uptake, via the photosynthesis and whatnot. They take in the carbon dioxide that's in the system, so you get a higher pH during the day. So, dosing your calc at night is going to mean that yes, you are going to technically have more of an elk spike at night if you're dosing that,
Yes.
but your pH will stay higher at night. So if you can get it figured out so that you're just dosing calc at night and your pH like only varies between, zero point 0.1 throughout the course of the day, that might be really good for your system.
Hmm. Interesting.
The only thing is like once you get to the point where like you can only dose so much via the Meckley method, right? Because you're basically, you can only dose as much as your evaporation would be, right? If you go more than your evaporation, then, well, at that point, like, you got to start adding something else in the reactor, or 2-part, 3-part solution. So
That's
I'm just kind of doing a little bit of everything, and it may seem complicated, but to me, it's more like it's also redundancy, because
yes.
if something goes wrong with my doser,
Yes.
and I don't get an alkalinity dose, I'm not going to see this massive swing. I'm still going to see a pretty massive swing because I have so much freaking coral in here, but it's not going to be nearly as bad as if it was the only method that the tank was relying on.
Plus, it's your full-time job, right? So that's
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah. No, I think it's important to distinguish those things too. Is that, like, there's things that may seem complicated to the average hobbyist, but it's all just because I'm trying to, like, optimize growth, color, safety, all those factors, right? So yeah,
very nice.
You know how it is. So I'm just moving my camera here.
Yeah. So that's nice. We are at 76 people right now.
Oh, that's pretty good. Nice.
It is pretty good. So folks, share it. And make sure to like, because we're at 35 measly likes. I'm sure you can do better.
Oh yeah, no, totally. Okay, what else you got for me? What else you want to pick at?
Well, I think we've covered the spectrum, the tissue health, ICP. So do you do that? Do you trust it? Do you adjust accordingly? All of that good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have been pretty steady on ICP for about a year now.
Yeah.
And I have all of the micro element bottles. So I send off an ICP about once a month, sometimes a little bit longer, and I make the adjustments. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't say that I'm doing like a moonshiner style method. I'm just kind of, like, trying to stay on top of just the general recipe of what's going on. I think you asked me, do I trust it? I think that's a reason to be a little bit wary of dosing some of the more, like, heavy metals right to the level that it suggests.
Yes.
Like, if it says that my copper is low, or some of those other heavy metals, I'm not necessarily going to add that right to the level that it says, because I just think there has to be some variability. And I think people that are running the moonshiner method, when it comes to, like, the no water change style of relying on ICP, like, you are really relying on that ICP. And you're kind of playing with fire a little bit. But that being said, I haven't tried it, so I can't speak from experience. But I do water changes still. And I just think it's it's a little bit scary to do the no water change thing. I love the idea of it. Like, in theory, like, if we really, really had everything figured out, it would be great to not have to do water changes. Like, you basically get your recipe and your soup figured out, and you just, keep maintaining it, and making little additions. Something I also want to say, I've said this before on another stream, but people kind of look to moonshiners and they kind of go like, oh, this method is like, look at the tanks, look at the amazing tanks that this method has produced. The thing that people need to remember is that people that have moonshiners tanks, like, they're not new hobbyists. Like, most of those people were, like, already really super experienced, like, SPS keepers or reef aquarius that wanted to, like, add just this other level of an aspect to it. So, like, their tanks probably still look pretty freaking good before they switch to moonshiners. But I'm not trying to point at moonshiners specifically. There's the Triton method. There's a lot of similar methods where it's all about just replenishing trace elements. But no, I think something, if you want to look at, and these aren't even really necessarily considered trace elements, like, I'd say your potassium and iodine are going to be the number 1 and 2 things you should be looking at. And potassium isn't a trace element; it is a major element. So, just make sure it's always, like, at least 380 to 420 or somewhere in that range, but just trying to get that at least natural seawater kind of range. I kind of try to just keep it around 400, and I've let it get a little higher. I haven't tried a super elevated saturated version, but some people have seen good results with that. And iodine too. I mean, the first thing I look at when somebody shows me their ICP test is the iodine and potassium if they're struggling with colors. Like I think if you think of here's another analogy for you. Think about if you're making a cake. It ties into your baking reference too. This is perfect. So if you're baking a cake, it's like your major elements are like the cake, like the main, like the cake, and then the icing on the cake is kind of like the potassium and iodide and some of those really important elements.
Yes.
And then the other elements, all those minor trace like molybdenum, magnesium, those are like the decorations. Those are like the little extra addition that's just going to give it that extra little pop. But you can have a really awesome cake that tastes really good if it's just icing and cake. Yes. But if it's just cake, it's not going to be that great.
What about strontium? Like, where would you put strontium in something like that? Like,
I mean, strontium I think is a pretty important, more of a major element. I can't remember what the level of strontium is. However, my understanding of strontium and the understanding of the chemistry and biology side of it is that it's fairly molecularly similar to magnesium and calcium. So if you find traces of it in a coral skeleton, it's basically just used as an alternate building block. However, if I see a low level of it on an ICP, I do make that adjustment and I try to get in line. The calc I have been using is the Brightwell Calc Plus 2, which has strontium in it and magnesium in it.
Yes.
So that's probably helped me keep that level close to inline.
Yeah.
And another thing to think about with trace elements too is like not all of them have to do with coral coloration. Like some of those metals are more associated with photosynthesis and the health of the zooxanthellae that are taking them in. But the zooxanthellae are also going to be reflecting pigments and creating color too. But most zooxanthellae are green or brown, basically. Like it's not where all your color is coming from. So that's why when you see photos of corals in the Great Barrier Reef that have bleached, like some of them look really cool because the zooxanthellae is ejected from the coral, and you're just left with the pigment of the coral underneath. So so it's kind of cool. It's like years ago when the zeovit method was really popular. The idea was to essentially you're kind of playing with the zooxanthellae populations by restricting them and delivering more. I think the idea was to deliver food to the coral via bacteria instead of through the zooxanthellae. So you get these more pastel color corals, which it was a thing. I think it was a harder method to really nail than just running a little bit of an elevated nutrient system and having corals that are darker and richer, because it's like if a super lean athlete gets really sick, they might not have as good a chance of, I don't know, maybe that's not the best analogy, but being super lean isn't always ideal if you have to fast or something like that. So
I give you a coral that's pretty dark, talking about an acro, for example. What do you do then? And
well, first of all, I'm like, what the hell, Dimitri? This coral looks like shit.
So I'll wear a mask of shame, and this is what I'm not actually even giving it to you because you will put it into your system, and your system is dialed in. I'm actually telling you I have a dark coral in my system. So what would you do other than shame me?
So to advise you on how to get the color back, kind of thing, like what would be the first thing I would suggest?
Yes.
Well, I would need a little bit more data to kind of really start to get things figured out. So I would want to probably see a picture of where it was placed. And then I would probably want to know some nutrient levels. And then I would discuss potentially changing the placement. I would probably want to know what your last ICP looked like, if possible.
Yep.
I think one thing that I have heard, and I've suspected this before, is that super elevated levels of iodine, if your iodine is too high, that can actually darken your corals.
Yes.
So if there's any reason that you're overdosing iodine for whatever reason, you need to remedy that. Yeah, I mean, when I see corals in people's tanks that aren't coloring up, and when everything on paper makes sense, it's kind of like that thing that we just don't know, where you kind of just have to be like, well, all of these things kind of make sense, and at that point you just have to, I think, just be patient and wait, and just be consistent with what you're doing, because eventually, like, I don't know, either things go downhill or things improve. But I think if you're consistent with what you're doing, things will usually improve. It's like that thing I said before, like nature wants to find a way, it wants to find a balance.
Yes.
So I don't know if that really
great
answers your question, but it's so case by case to be able to be like, oh, your coral's dark, like, how do we figure this out? Like, it's there's just so many factors. But yeah, there's just so many things.
Okay, let me throw another question at you. So I've heard two different theories. Some say that your higher nutrients go hand in hand with higher lighting. And then I've also heard the exact opposite, where basically they should be inverse correlated. So basically, if I'm raising my nutrients, this is where my corals are going to be getting all that stuff, so I don't need as much light.
I didn't read that article. I should, but my understanding.
I don't know.
There is an article. I don't know if it was on Reef Builders. And we should try to dig it up. But it was about the corals responding well to better at lower nutrients, would do better at higher light. It was the opposite of what you would expect. I mean, in my experience, corals that are in a system with elevated nutrients that are darker can handle more light, because it's almost like they have natural sunscreen and sun resistance. It's like,
this is what I was always thinking. Yes.
Yeah, and I feel like as a coral gets darker, you should be able to move it into a higher light spot, and it should be able to take it. Yes. I've only heard about people having problems when their system has low nutrients and high light. That can lead to burnt tips, because, like, the zooxanthellae are trying to populate those growing rapidly, say growth tips. Let's not say rapidly growing, but growth tips.
Yes.
And there just isn't enough nutrient for the zooxanthellae to populate fast enough. And I think that's one of the reasons that we get the burnt tip syndrome. I would like to see a little bit more data to support the low light or low nutrient high light thing. Because in theory, are you saying that because they would be receiving more light, they would be getting more energy via photosynthesis?
Yeah, and then so we don't need as much phosphate nitrate, but I don't know.
No, I see what you're saying, but I think it comes down to, like, I don't think corals only supplement part of their food and energy source from the zooxanthellae. It's kind of, I think it's basically like a sugar essentially that's produced.
Correct.
That feeds them, right? But I think when corals are getting food from nitrates, they're actually not so much consuming the nitrates directly, they're consuming bacteria that have consumed those nitrates. Yes. And that's a reason that, I mean, my theory is that most algae in our system that are not talking about zooxanthellae, but more problematic algae like bryopsis or hair algae or I think those kinds of algae are actually more efficient at taking in phosphate and nitrate than our corals zooxanthellae is, and I think that's why.
Right.
I'm a really strong believer that if you start to have a type of algae that's taking off in your tank, just physically try to get as much of it out of there as possible, because it's going to outcompete your corals for
How
those
often do you
nutrients.
clean your glass?
Probably twice a week.
So not crazy amount, right? I mean, like
No, yeah,
not like every other day kind of thing. So
no, yeah, and it's nothing super heavy duty. No, it's pretty easy to clean.
because technically, even whatever we measure, whether it's ICP or us, there can be a lot of things that are still in the water, but they are sucked in almost immediately, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so it's another one of those things where on paper the numbers can be one thing, but in reality it's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and yeah, speaking of that too, something that I do when I send my ICPs off, I don't do it every time, but I try to do it regularly, is I actually test all my parameters with the kits, the hobby grade kits that I have,
Yes.
before I send my ICP, so that it helps me know that the testing I'm doing at home is accurate.
Yes.
And actually, the Salifert potassium kit is actually very good. It's within, I would say, usually within about 10 ppm of
Wow.
the ICP result. Whereas the HANA kits, like the ultra low range phosphate checker,
Yeah.
I've talked to a couple people about this, and we think that they get less accurate over time. Like, they're great for the first year, maybe first 2 years, but after that they start to get less accurate. I don't know why, but I've found that
It's the LED sensor thingy, probably. Right?
yeah, like it gets a little bit weaker. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it might be, if you're really obsessed with getting an accurate number, maybe you might need to replace that checker every 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
But yeah, so like generally my phosphate tends to be higher on my
Yes.
ICPs than it is on my
Yep.
checker. So, which is fine. I mean, as long as I kind of know, like, as long as the checker is picking up something, as long as
Yeah.
it's 0.02 or 0.03,
Yeah.
then I'm kind of okay with that. So,
So
yeah, so
this morning I actually shot another live stream where I received my ICP from Fauna Marin, and I compared
mhm.
that to all the hobby grade as well as the Trident values, and actually had Fauna dial in at the time, and we've actually gone through all the reports, and I've made some suggestions and whatnot. So if anybody wants to kind of see
Cool.
the troubleshooting, and I also fed the data to Chat GPT. So
Oh yeah.
that was pretty dope. So yeah,
Yeah,
that was fun.
yeah. Nice. Yeah, it's going to start advising us on our tanks soon. I've asked GBT a few questions about growing Aropora, and it was said some information right, and some of it was like, this is not
You
this
know
is
what?
not good information.
What you can also try is you can ask to explain that to you if you were a 5-year-old, for example, and it will do that. Or I tried like
Oh
a
yeah.
17th century aristocrat, and
Oh nice.
he did the. It's incredible. So
Yes.
it's pretty cool. We're at 84 people, 44 likes.
Nice.
Let's keep it up a little bit. Check out fraggarage.ca. We do have a real coral wizard with us, and I love it where, it's one thing of if you're on a forum and somebody's saying something and you haven't seen their tank, but anybody can go to fraggarage.ca and actually see what those corals are. And it's not your first rodeo. You've been around the block for a while. So clearly,
Yeah.
we should listen to what you have to say.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and I'm gonna have a Easter sale coming up here, probably next weekend. So
That's amazing.
yes, but just a reminder that I only ship within Canada, so don't ask me if I ship to the States or outside of Canada. I just do not. It's not possible right now. So
I have a treasurecorals.com website where I do some coral, but primarily it's all the 3D printed stuff, including those visors I have behind me, you name it. And you cannot imagine how many times folks from US like go and like, oh, I'm gonna click on that tab stellata and I'm gonna add it there, and then they like, do it? And I have everywhere. I have plasters saying, cannot ship. I'd love to ship to US, but
no, it's hopefully that changes, because if we can certify that certain things are aquacultured and they're not an animal that's a protected animal that came out of the ocean, like it's generations and generations later, then there should be no reason to protect these animals going across the border. But it's also the logistics of it. It's expensive enough to ship within Canada, so I can't imagine how much it would be for me to ship overnight to Pennsylvania or something, if even possible.
And then going even more states, one way or the other, for sure. So, but we'll say no to a challenge. We'll never say no to a challenge. We just hit 100-minute mark, and I'm mindful of everybody's time, including Adam's. So I'm thinking.
I'm not in a rush. Sunday afternoon, man. We can talk about corals all afternoon.
You're a lot earlier there.
That's right.
So, this is a good chance for folks to ask a few questions. But I'm thinking maybe we should have Adam comment, like actually use some real life examples, and see if there is maybe a few things that you can improve or suggest to improve upon a system, for example. What do you think?
For sure.
So I'll see if I can reverse this so you can actually see what I'm looking at. So this is my existing. So let's talk a little bit about the flow, and I will try to.
I can also get into reverse mode here.
Sure. So right here. So I just turned off the blue light, so you can actually see things a little bit better. I'm currently doing a complete rescaping, so every one of those corals is actually pegged, so you can pick it up and move it around. So I've actually done a lot of changes. That's why it's a little bit slimy. But I'll give you a couple of examples of like things that do bug me. So, for example, green slimer, I've never lost a green slimer ever. Like those things can handle any parameters whatsoever. But for example, the fox flame, any suggestion on how I can bring out the color a little bit more on this guy? And
fox flame actually I find doesn't like too much light.
Really?
I've seen it do really well around like 150 to 200, where it was the richer, but it can handle like 350 par too. So do you find that red is a color that's more challenging for your system, or is it are there other red corals in there that are happy?
No, they are. So here's a perfect example of things that do bug me. There's this guy here, which I think is some sort of a bonsai, but it's kind of turdy, a little bit of a purpley color, but and it might not have been here before, so I just rearranged things. But I want the actual, nice color on this thing, and it's not there.
Have you done a detailed check for potential bugs?
I have, but I would say that on one of my systems, I've had a little bit of Aropora eating platforms, but for example, these ones, they all came in, like nothing came off of it. But that's flatworms. In terms of other bugs, it's been a while since I've had any. Actually, my red bugs have never returned that I had about a year and a half ago. But that's what your mind goes to, like almost immediately?
Well, not so much. I'm just kind of going through things. But so what are the nutrients on this system right now? Like nitrate, phosphate?
So they are, let me tell you. Nitrate is about 7 to 9, and then phosphate is 0.1.
7 to 9, 0.1. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah. The only other thing I could think, and I didn't really touch on this with corals darkening, but I
Yeah.
think there's a big role to do with bacteria and
Yes.
corals getting dark. And I've talked about this with a few people. I've seen some corals which got really dark on me recover after running a chemiclean treatment.
Oh, okay.
So there's potentially the other thing that I haven't done it yet, but is you can do like the microbiome swabs. So you can actually swab coral tissue and see if
Yep.
there's a pathogen on the actual tissue. But yeah, I think with the coral, like fox flame in the spot that it's in, like I think it's just settling. Like, you know, that tank is still pretty young, and
Yes.
you know, you just can't make every coral happy. So it probably just isn't at the point where it's you know, if it's not really growing yet, if it doesn't have active growth tips, then it's probably just like establishing itself, and the
Mm.
color will come once it's established.
Do you believe in kind of snipping the points off to encourage growth? Like, is it something?
Yeah, I definitely do that. Whether it's just for me making frags or you know, intentionally. I definitely have had a lot of corals that I've just looked at them for so long and just seen them in crust, and then finally one day I'm just like, you know what, screw this thing, and I'll just like
Yeah.
hack up some spots on it. And then certain species are a little bit more responsive than others, but yeah, I would say more than half the time it does give you a growth response as long as the coral has a heavy enough encrusted base.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got it.
You could try doing a little hacking on that and see what happens. You know, like I don't, I don't think you're gonna kill it. Like you're just gonna,
No.
you know, stimulate it really.
Yeah, I once bought, it was about 6 or 7 years ago, I bought a beautiful sunset, like a true original sunset millie, like not the, something that gets from the ocean. It's actually, generation after generation. And that
Hmm.
stub was in my tank for 3 years where it was just not growing. It was exactly the same thing. And I think
Hmm.
after I broke off a tip, that's when the whole thing just started
Hmm.
really going at it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Uh,
no, that's a good trick.
And there's some questions for you in the stream. So
Oh, nice.
there's actually quite a few. So what par for vivid confetti? First of all.
Confetti, I've found around. It does do well in a range of par, but it because it's such a variable coral depending on like where you place it. But I've kind of liked it around 300 to 350.
That's a pretty high.
Um, yeah, but I've also had it in lower areas, and it's just more of a deeper pink in the body. And it's been fine in like the 200 range too. So it's fairly forgiving. I think I couldn't tell you for like absolute optimal ideal coloration.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And the interceptor, how much of it do you use on a 2 year preventative treatment? Like how many pills per gallon or whatever it is? Like
So if it's the gray bugs, it sounds like it has to be based on, you know, the past and conversations. It was Farmer Ty that I was talking to that really got me on needing a heavier dose. I think
Yep.
it's like, I don't know the milligrams and number of pills per gallon, but it's something like 6 to 8 times the treatment that worked on red bugs is what you need for the gray bugs.
Okay.
So it's a lot, and it's not cheap, and it's not necessarily easy to get unless you have a vet that's willing to prescribe it. So
I gotcha.
yeah.
And another question. So this is a perfect opportunity for people to ask you.
Yeah.
How do I get those bright tips on my tangerine shortcake?
It seems like those tips come out when it really starts growing. Like let's see here. I
Oh,
flip around.
nice.
I don't know if this is gonna. The white balance doesn't look very good. But yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
There's a frag
Oh God,
here.
look at that.
Nah, it doesn't look very good in this. Yeah, so there. Yeah, once it's been established for long enough,
Yeah.
that one gets really nice and bright orange on it. But yeah, no, it's just a time thing. I think I would say it's more of a time thing than anything. Yeah, it's the colony. There's the colony here. Can we see that? Yeah,
Oh
there's the
yeah.
colony.
Oh yeah. That looks good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that that's the thing is sometimes when things get fragged, they don't always like sometimes that growth tip loses some of its color once it's like it'll look great when it's first fragged because it's right off the colony, and
Yep.
then it puts its energy into getting a solid base. And then once its solid base is down, it's going to start getting that tip color once the tips grow. Yeah, there's certain corals like I have this Superman Millie that sometimes I cut some frags of it and the nice blue tip goes away because the frag just puts all its energy into putting a base down. So
Yep.
I have to tell people like, yeah, I shipped you a frag of the right coral. It's just once it grows, you'll get that blue tip back. So
Yes.
yeah.
That makes sense. And the sea reefer says, my green chalice turned dark after I put it on the AI Coral Grow, which is just a kind of a regular light, not the blue one, but the regular. And he's
Yeah.
thinking it's too much light. I have it at 20%. That shouldn't be too much light.
Yeah, I mean chalices, although like I have some in the LPS system that I will show you where they are. It's kind of funny. Because I had to like let's put this lens on here.
Yeah.
They were getting too much light even on the lowest part of my rack. So I moved them
Oh, turn it
to
down to
like
20%.
I literally put
Yeah.
them like underneath the rack. So they're getting like almost like probably like less than 50 par down there.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Because what was happening? Like, were they too light, and you was thinking they just almost gonna
yeah,
get burned?
they were bleaching a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So and that was even in that like low range, like you can see I've got a bunch of Fabias there that are like those are probably 60 par or something. So but yeah, you can see my Ghanies over here, like kind of the range that they're in. They're not really
Wow.
moving. They could move a little more than they are, but
Folks, you can get all of this on fraggarage.ca. Check it out. Like, this is like those gold hammers. Oh my god.
yeah, no, this type of gold hammer I've been growing for probably like 10 years, and I can't even tell you how much of it I've grown and sold. It's pretty
I think
pretty
your phone
crazy.
is in a different orientation. It kind of switched
Oh,
to
is it?
vertical.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
there we
better.
go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there they are. Yeah,
Nice.
so this is the just classic gold stem hammer. I
It
think
is
I
a
sell it
sick
for
hammer.
40 a head.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh my
yeah. I
god.
mean, I guess I can do a
Okay.
little
Yes, let's
showing
let's
of
let,
things
let's do
here.
that. So let's
All right, yeah. So turn off some flow, and then
okay.
yeah,
Let's
I have my methods. I do have a system walkthrough on my YouTube channel too, if anybody wants to check that out.
and make sure to subscribe. So
Yeah, yeah.
and
Ooh, I need to
just in
wash my
general,
hands here.
before Adam is gonna do this, folks, make sure to share this everywhere. You gotta increase the count. This is my little how are you with my current count, but I think it can certainly increase. But let's do a walkthrough.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, like I'm keeping my torches kind of on their own section here for the most part,
Yeah.
because as we know, they don't get along with other Euphilia very much. So so yeah, this is like the Holy Grail, like the OG. This was actually like spawned in captivity. This strain. So
Really?
although I have seen ones from it looks a little green. The filter's not right on this phone right now.
Yep.
But yeah, I have seen ones come.
I think.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. You know.
That looks better actually now.
Yes.
Let's see. There's like a tiger there, master. A lot of these torches, I'd say probably more than half are aquacultured here.
Yep.
Yeah, these are like a different strain of like a Holy Grail. They're kind of cool.
It is
Some of
cool.
them have pink tips and blue tips. Some of them are like a mix. But yeah, as far as like the classic hammers, like this is the gold that I've grown for a long time. That's the like super orange. This is the one I call rose gold. And this one I call molten gold. So it's just a little bit of a different.
Yep.
People always ask me the difference between the gold and the molten gold. Lots of splatter type styles.
You don't
Yeah.
broadcast feed them, do you?
So I do actually. So I do turn off the pumps sometimes when I feed the LPS. And I just it's kind of like a general just blast all the food that I was feeding the fish anyways, and just blast it directly into the Euphilia.
Yes.
And the fish are gonna just pick up whatever they don't get, but yeah, there's definitely some nice Gonioporas here. These are a couple of my favorites. Fireballs there.
That's amazing.
This is a cool multi-colony. This one's sold actually, but it's pretty nice piece. Some frags over there. Yeah.
Is it grafted or like?
Yeah, no, they just some of the mariculture or the mariculture farms will make sort of a combo rock. So they'll put 3 or 4 on the same rock.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah. And then I've kind of got this is such a scattered, like crazy blend of things in here. I should be more organized with my zoas. But yeah, it's a bit of a mad science project all the time, you know.
There's no almost like everything is so clean. Like you don't clean your egg crate, do you?
No.
So how does it say so? Free of whatever. Just
I don't know. I mean, I guess just like snails and herbivorous or fish that eat algae. You know, every fish kind of has a bit of a purpose that's in here. So, yeah, actually, this is kind of cool. Okay, I'm going to show you something that kind of looks like shit, but see, this hammer was one of the nicest hammers I ever have gotten, and the polyp completely died, and I kept the base, and just the smallest amount of tissue managed to survive and propagate new heads. So that's kind of cool. I've got these little baby heads of this really cool. It's the nicest branching hammer I've ever seen, and it fucking started dying on me. So yeah, this will be a captive generation for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, we were talking about chalices a bit. I mean, I do like some of my chalices just grow just in the lower parts of my SPS system, and they seem really happy down here. So you know, some of them are just over in the corners. Like it's all about utilizing like the space that's kind of your shit space, right? Like these are favias that I keep. I shouldn't have let these all grow together, but it's done now. Yeah, actually, here's this is kind of a cool thing to take a look at. Is I put the torts together so that people could see the difference. So this is Cali tort, which is I'd say more of a royal kind of blue.
Yeah.
Oregon tort, which like the coralite structure is quite different. And then this one we call the West Coast tort, which is more of a turquoise.
Like turquoise or okay.
Yeah, you have a tort like that. I can't remember what you call it.
I do. So you've named it, or you guys named it West Coast. Okay. I'll make a point of it.
But here's another similar coral just for a fun little like checking between. So these are Jason Fox Aqua Delight.
Yeah.
And then this is ORA Pearlberry. So I mean, right now I like the Aqua Delights actually a bit more. But
wow.
Yeah. You know, there's corals like that, you know, maybe they're the same species or a similar morph, but you know, we just don't really know. Like there's just so many different like variations out there, even just the placement in your tank. Like there's a few corals I have that depending on where I put them, they can just look so different. So it's all fun though.
Do you have the Gila Monster and Smoke Show perhaps to show?
Oh yeah, the one I called Smoke Show is I don't know if we're going to be able to see it very well, but it's actually a humilus that I don't think. See, you can kind of see it there.
Yeah.
So humilus that's purple with like bright sort of neon green tips, and then it gets like orange in the base. Okay. And it's a piece that was from Fiji. and I got it probably 7 or 8 years ago. And Fiji hasn't exported corals for a long time, so I don't know how long it's been. It's been 4 or 5 years now.
Okay.
So it's kind of cool. Like that's probably, even though I wouldn't say it's like a super high end expensive coral, I would say it's pretty unique and rare at this point.
Yes.
Because also the Fiji humilis are, I think, a tighter, smaller branch, and the Indo ones are more of a tight, or a bigger, stumpier branch. So
Correct.
It's a little different.
I got you. And what about the Gila Monster?
Where's that one? Oh, it's over there. I just made a bunch of frags of it. Yeah, it's like, I think it's probably a Latistella.
Yeah.
And it's a nice orange acro. Starting to get some more like actual orange acros too. Like these creamsicle are a nice orange.
Yes.
So a couple of my mother colonies there.
I remember trading some Gila Monster with Devin when he was in the Niagara Coral Show a few years ago. And then
nice.
Mine for some reason disappeared at some point. So you know how it is.
This is that grafted Aropora.
Yes.
You see, it's pretty cool
God.
actually. Yeah.
It is pretty cool. Now, for an Aropora, what do you think the requirements are? Like, I mean,
it's actually like, I find a little bit of a fussy coral. Like,
it is.
I found that you have to have, it's a really one of those corals where you have to have enough nutrients and not too much light. Like it's that balance thing. So you can easily give it too much light and too low in nutrients, and it'll bleach out. It's like, so I mean, right now I thought this was getting too much light, but it's actually adapted to that spot and it seems happy. So
wow.
So this is one of my favorite new pieces. I call this Rainbow Sherbet.
Yes. Oh my God.
I'd say it's like almost like a nicer, I wouldn't even say it's exactly like Walt Disney, but it's probably more of a tangerine orange, and the Walt Disneys are more like, that's one of my Walt Disney colonies there, or two of them there.
Oh my goodness. Well, folks, one day I'm hoping to come over to Adam's place and bring my camera and shoot a nice long video in 4K with where we could really geek out on that, because I think
definitely
it doesn't do it justice.
More chalices. There's the big
my
boobies.
goodness.
Watermelon.
Wow. I like the green tort. That's starting to show up in a few places, but that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Sorry, green dragon.
Green dragon. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. So strong flow. Pests. So do you have a separate quarantine system? Like, how do you ensure that whenever you get
I'll actually show you. This is what I'm doing right now. Is 1 second, gotta unplug something the old school way. I've got a little bit of film on the surface, but okay, so the LPS system, as you can see, I am doing quarantine down here for my acros. So the reason for that is, if I bring in an order of acros, I don't have to dip them right away, because there's no other acros in the system.
Yes.
So like, I just land them and I just let them settle, and then before they get moved to the SPS system, they get rebased. And I have a really good method of rebasing. That's actually something I should do a video on. So everything gets rebased just so that you can eliminate any possibility of egg masses or anything. But yeah, these are some new Indo acros. There's some that I moved over already. So, so these are down here.
That is gorgeous.
Here's another kind of funny little trick. It's not stocked right now, but this back system has this small little frag tank attached to it. And at one point I had it full of peppermint shrimp. So basically, if you have enough peppermint shrimp in a small system and you don't feed them, they're just going to go after everything. So I put like Monty's in there with Monty eating nudibranchs, and they immediately ate the Monty eating nudibranchs. And there's certain peppermint shrimp that are better than others for pest control.
Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately, they've been really hard to get this year, and I don't know if it's just because they're out of season, but I almost don't want to say what kind are the really good kind because I don't I want to be able to get more. But yeah, my idea is just to keep that tank full of those cleaner shrimp.
Well, so there is you find that there are different ones that would do a different job, kind of thing. So
yeah, it just seems like certain types are like a little bit more
I got it.
less a little more indiscriminate when it comes to what they will feed on.
Okay, I got it. I got you.
Yeah. So yeah, anybody's they can ask me what type. You can message me about it. I just it's been so hard to get any. Yeah, it's hard to get them from the
for
farm.
life. Cooking
Yes, yeah.
This is the second time somebody mentioned
Yeah.
particular shrimp. So
Yeah,
okay.
It's true.
We won't talk about it anywhere else. We gotta, or if we do, you have to ask whether Adam has gotten his allotment, and if not,
Yes.
you have to give him the first to right. So of refusal.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna try. I'm actually gonna try breeding some clownfish. Finally, I've never really done it, and my clowns over here have been laying on this cleaning magnet that I can easily remove from the tank.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought it's probably time to give it a go.
That's amazing.
And while I'm at it, I think it's a fairly similar process breeding shrimp. So I think I might just try that at the same time in a separate little partition.
You're venturing into other things. So
yeah, I mean, I think as much of this hobby as we can try to master doing in captivity, then the better, right? Like, I mean, it's all other than certain fish, like we can almost have an entirely aquacultured system, from corals to I'm actually surprised we don't see more captive bred shrimp, because I don't think they're particularly hard to breed. So I don't know if ORA is doing it. Do you know anything about that?
No, it's been a while since I've kind of followed up, but I'm a big fan of Ori and like everything that they've been doing. I just wish we had access to some of those corals here in Canada, because it's been a while since I've seen red dragon in any of the local aquariums, for example.
Yeah.
Red Planet.
And that's another thing that happens with Red Planet. Yeah, it's an interesting thing that happens too with like certain corals. Like once we get good at growing them in the hobby, they seem to stop being maricultured. So like, like I mean, because we don't need them to import coral, like
it's the same thing.
Pally Tort, because red dragon or whatever. Yeah, there's no point in farming Cardus really anymore. It's just such an easy coral to grow, or pink Cadillac or something. It's funny that some of those corals that devalued themselves just from being such good growers.
Yes. Wow. And what do you think would be the next hot thing for 2023 in terms of corals? Like, what would be the trend? Or
the next hot corals?
Yeah. So
I mean, I'm still looking forward to trying to get some Malaysian Aropora. I think that's kind of where we're seeing morphs of acros that are like really different, like some of the speciosa and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. Another thing I've been sort of I would like to experiment with, trying to see if there's a way to actually make it happen intentionally, is FGP infection, so fluorescent green protein infections.
Yes.
So I have one that I'm kind of working on right now. Actually, I'll show the frag for a second. So it's the Worldwide Corals Terra Red. I had one that had a streak in it it just had a little bit of the fluorescent green protein, so I separated that section. So I'm trying to find like unique things like that I can, basically make my own unique morphs out of, because that's something, if we can figure out, like, my thinking is that, like, okay, so like a coral, I'm backing up here a little bit. So a coral like this one, this is I call it toxic. It's a Aropora florida. It's obviously extremely rich in fluorescent green protein, right? Like you can't get any more fluorescent green protein than that. Like these kind of corals are obviously just absolutely covered in it. So what are the chances that you could take some of that, whatever makes that protein, do that and somehow transfer it to another coral? Can we do it intentionally? I don't know. I think that if you just have a bunch of corals that are from different regions that are different morphs and colors, like eventually some funky stuff is going to happen.
Yes.
There's always a chance, right? Like corals that are close enough together may just eventually, share. We know they can share probably certain strains of zooxanthellae.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's things like that. I've got a chunk of this Monte Setosa that has the different color in it too. I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of cool, hey?
Yeah.
So that's probably a different strain of zooxanthellae.
It's amazing. I mean, those things do pop up once in a while. It's and sometimes they stay, and sometimes eventually they kind of go away. Eh?
Yeah, it's true. It's true, and that's always been the trick with the grafted Monte caps. Is you have to the one section can really take over. Like these are my little splice colonies. And that you can see they're like almost all like the gold yellow color. Like they don't have very much of the red.
Yes.
Like if you zoom in on them, you'll see some little streaks to like half a polyp that's red, but the colonies are mostly the yellow color, unfortunately.
Yes. A couple of questions from the stream. One is, what's your calcium rate for calcium reactor?
Oh, right now it's like 100 mils a minute.
100 mils a minute, so nice.
It's ripping. Yeah, it's ripping right now.
And then
this is my little pump down here. Let's take a look at it for a second.
Yeah. Oh my.
That thing is freaking. It's going fast.
That's a lot of calcium. And what about
big reactor too?
Your gorgeous. Is it one chamber or two?
It's one chamber that fits 50 pounds of media.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it's big.
What is the media?
I use the Reborn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did talk earlier on about how the system is. So, what about the Frag? Someone asked about the Frag rack system. What? Who made it?
Yeah, so mine are the Building an Obsession racks. I like them. The cool thing is that they fit in these Coleman party coolers.
Yes.
So so these coolers, I've got one there. Whoop, can't do that orientation. Yeah, these coolers fit the racks perfectly. So you can take the whole rack out and dip it or bring it to a show or whatever. I just kept the middle section egg crate because I figure if it's just colonies, I don't need the little locking mechanisms.
Yep.
But yeah, no, those are good racks. Just ordered some more racks, and I
think you cut out there for a second. Did Adam press the button? Can you guys see me? Yes, I think Adam, and you must be back. You're back.
Okay. Yeah, so Luna was the company I just got some racks from, and their pricing is really good. So those guys seem good. They're also in the States. So
who made your egg crate frag legs? Those beautiful ones.
Oh yeah, so this Dimitri guy. Yeah, but it's funny actually because these racks that I got from Building an Obsession, I had all the egg crate legs from you, and I figured out that I could flip them upside down, and then they fit on the bottom of the thumb screws. So I was able to use. I had like 40 of the 40 legs or 50 legs from you. So I was glad I was able to make use of them. Yeah,
that's phenomenal. So treasurecorals.com, guys.
Yeah. Oh my Dimitri makes some lots of cool stuff. Visors, price markers, lots of good stuff for shops and people that do fragging. So definitely worth checking out. Yeah.
Doing my best. We have way past the 2 hour mark.
Whoa, that's crazy.
It is pretty crazy. So I think we're gonna start wrapping up. Yes, it's very subtle. The shameless plug for treasure corals.
Yeah.
Um, so Adam, 2 hours, 15 minutes went by like this.
It
I'm
did.
so
Yeah.
glad we were able to cover. I always kind of look back whenever I do one of those things to make sure that we've covered things, and I think we did. We kind of touched upon every one of those notes. I do feel that we could easily go for another hour easy, but we won't.
Yeah.
We'll do it again. Folks, make sure to like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Follow Adam's channel on YouTube and the website. Adam, how's your Instagram presence or Facebook? Like, what do you?
It's not. Yeah, it's not. Instagram's not bad. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I try to like post photos and things pretty
Perfect.
regularly. So yeah.
Check out the Easter sales on Frag Garage, and
Yes.
I will probably rewatch it just to really. I think the takeaway for me, polyp extension, tissue. This is what I'm going to be focusing on, and I think we're gonna repeat it again. And
Yeah, for sure.
touch
Yeah,
base on that.
happy to.
Yes,
Sounds
Adam.
good.
Thank you so much,
Thank
and
you.
you enjoy the rest of the weekend. This is a beautiful system, and definitely you're setting the high bar in this market. So that's amazing.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay, bye everyone.
Okay, cheers,
Use
buddy.
Aquatic
Talk to
Log,
you soon.
aquaticlog.com. Cheers.
Yes, I agree. I concur.
Yes. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.